By the time Juno Vega reached the Prism Hall on Cairo's station, the corridor lamps had settled into their nightly sulk-low and blue, pretending to be tired so no one would ask them to do something dramatic. Juno wasn't tired. Rumor had grabbed her by the jacket at Dock 6 and dragged her up 5 levels. The Assembly of Nine Kinds has put a prize on a pedestal. They said the word wager. They said courage. Cairo's was a cathedral to commerce that had forgotten it started as a mining spar. Glass ribs arched over a belly full of markets and music. Polished stone walked you past stalls selling bottled rain and gravity in jars. Juno moved through it like a local with too many debts and an appointment with a miracle. Quick. Chin up, hands visible. The scar under her left ribs warmed with the elevator's rise as if to say, I'm still here. The orbital solace fire had left her that coin-sized brand and a habit of counting breaths. When the air felt thin, the Prism Hall squared itself across from a view of the copper planet. It was all edges and light-caught planes, a geometry teacher's fever dream. Delegations had arrived dripping status. Dockhands lingered in their work grays, pretending they were on break. Press drones hovered with the neutrality of vultures. The air smelled like polished metal, and expensive flowers shipped across 3 jumps. To wilt beautifully on cue, 9 banners hung from the girders, each a translated boast stitched in colors that argued with one another. The 9 kinds themselves occupied their tiers with the choreography of people who never grew up in crowds. The Loric, a pillar of living mercury wearing a faint electromagnetic halo that lifted dust motes, as if blessing them. To Festin brood sibs, their carapace sheened like black ice, jointed legs folded in the patient geometry of siege engines at rest. The Crick's choir bundled in velvet to keep their lungs from evaporating, mask faces glistening with condensation, every breath a soft reed note. A high mezza given over to the Kest Prime, stone bright and bone latticed, a predator who had learned diplomacy without surrendering the idea of teeth. Others filled the ring, a pair of whispering seraph robed in moth silk, a coil of ribbonfish from Jai suspended in personal brine, humans from 3 flags and none. Juno clocked exits, counted guards real and ceremonial, noted the distribution of accidental weapons, walking sticks that were not walking sticks, jewelry that remembered being blades, carapace fringes woven with conductive wire on the days. Perched like a dare, set the prize, even in the hall's glitter. The ship drew eyes and kept them. Dagger-nosed, skin like poured shadow, she seemed to drink light and exhale promise. The legends had 1,000 names. The registry used one, invincible. She wore it the way some people wear forgiven, with a private argument. Rumor said she'd outrun 3 navies and a debt collector with a grudge. Rumor also said her cockpit smelled like cold coffee. And the last good thing you said to someone before the alarm. A chuckle rolled from the Kest Prime, a small avalanching of stone. You came to bid, little mammal. Came to watch, Juno said, letting the corner of her mouth lift. She was not dressed for bidding. Re-entry battered jacket, boots that had held too many rungs, a shirt with a heat-sealed patch that read property of no one in 3 languages. But the thing about a face like hers, open, a little reckless, eyes with the habit of measuring was that rooms sometimes mistook it for invitation. The presiding arbiter rose from its recess at center stage, a needle-thin automaton older than the station itself. It revolved along its axis like a contemplative screwdriver. Voice units warmed with a bee-swarm hum. The assembly recognizes a challenge set by consensus, a demonstration of highest courage. The victor claims the Invincible's registry and title. Murmurs walked the tiers. The Loric rang like tuned metal. Our brood swam the mantles of black dwarfs and returned with our edges unsoftened. The festin clicked, plates flexing. We hatch where gravity tries to fold us. We name courage breakfast and devour it before sun stir. The Cricks exhaled a chord that smelled faintly of ozone and clean linen. We sing to call home sons that forgot their names. The song is a narrow bridge. We cross and return. Juno tucked her thumbs into her belt to keep them from drumming. Nobody says the ordinary things. We got up when we were tired. We told the truth when it was inconvenient. We stayed when leaving would have been easier. Ordinary courage never gets banners. That's why games exist. We have a game, she said, not raising her voice and still reaching the back row. 9 kinds of skepticism turned toward her like a heliostat following light. What game? The Kest asked. Amusement thickened the rumble. Curiosity coiled behind it. A simple one, Juno said. Old Earth, no armor, no training, only nerve. Someone in the cheap seats laughed and choked it off when the automaton swiveled an optical unit at them. The Festin's secondary eyes narrowed. The Loric's halo brightened, then dimmed a pulse of unease. The Arbiter's lenses focused with a click. Proposer, specify venue. Juno glanced at the doors behind the dais. The hall's side chambers hung off the station like glass teardrops. She'd seen them on the way in, designed for private treaties and very public drama. She pointed. There, transparent, recorded. No one can say the light was wrong. A shiver of approval ran through the spectators. If you were going to stage courage, visibility was the trick. Courage rotted in shadows. It hardened in glass. The Kest Prime extended one arm the way landforms extend, slowly. With consequence. What do you stake, human, besides your position in our memory? Juno tipped her chin at the invincible without being rude. If I win, I fly her. And if you fail? His voice didn't bother with mockery. Predators collect answers like this. They tell you how to hunt. Then you keep your ship, Juno said. And a story worth the breath it takes to tell. Somewhere to her left, a human voice stage whispered, Vega, you're out of your depth. She did not turn. Depth was where you got to use your legs. The automaton's tone acquired the faintest undertone of delight. Challenge is accepted pending collective assent. Its head rotated. Light crawled through the hall, registering nods, gestures, color shifts. Scent plumes in language's evolution had never intended to be read by machines. The tally ran like rain on a tin roof and ended under clear skies. Assemble in Chamber Theta, the Arbiter said. Witnesses permitted. Interference prohibited. Measure will be presence and poise. Poise, Juno repeated softly, tasting the word. Courage had a posture. It wasn't chest out. It was shoulders down, breath steady, wrists loose. Solace had taught her that when the fire took the oxygen and the alarms lied. Breathe in 4. Hold 2, about 6. Move the next hand. She took the stairs down. The crowd parted because people like to pretend they would not watch you fall. As she passed the days, the Invincible's hull caught the hall's peculiar light and threw it back as a low, bruised dark gleam. For a flicker of a moment, the kind that ruins the next 5 years. Juno pictured her hands on that console, the hum under her palms, the trajectory that aimed not for safety but for meaning. Captain, someone called mockingly. From the row of freelance pilots, manifest. She returned without looking. Back, the glass corridor to Chamber Theta was a throat of cool air and the whisper of seals minding their business. Juno's reflection walked beside her, hair that never quite learned apart, eyes that had counted exits since she was 12. The scar under her ribs warmed again as if Solace were tapping a spoon against a cup. Remember breath. Remember the hand you went back for. She did. She always did. The chamber hung off the station like a drop about to fall. Its floor was a lattice. Its walls a crystal clarity that made you feel honest whether you wanted to or not. Kairos turned beneath. Copper planet a slow coin flip. Stars poured by in the slow river-way motion that had time in it. The automaton hovered near the ceiling, already recording, lens flare dots, faint ticks of internal timing like a heart patient's monitor. A pedestal stood at center, velvet-lined. Juno walked to it and snapped open the case she'd carried like an argument. Metal gleamed. Not new metal, old, polished by hands, pitted by time. Compact, heavy, simple. The past has a particular shine when you invite it into a bright room. Gasps rippled. Carapaces creaked. The Loric's halo fizzed like distant rain on power lines. The cricks drew breath together, and their velvet dampened the frightened chord. The Festin brood sib took a half step forward despite themselves, blades whispering against one another. Human, they clicked, mandibles tasting the air. We have heard of this. The Kest Prime's secondary lids lowered a fraction. Predators don't fear what kills you. They fear not knowing the angle. Give the name, he said. Careful, where I'm from, Juno said. And her voice did not pretend to be bigger than her lungs. It's called Russian roulette. Even the automaton hesitated, gears swallowing a beat because machines that old learn the weight of words. Explain the rules, the Kest said, not as a command, as someone putting a foot down to test a bridge. Juno closed the case lid softly, leaving the metal's afterimage burning on every retina. No, she said. Explanation is armor. You asked for a measure of courage. That's hands and breath. That's not math you get to do before you stand here. A murmur with edges passed through the witnesses, disapproval, relief, appreciation, hunger. People love clarity. They also love being made to admit they wanted it. The arbiter's tone was dry as vacuum. Stakes reaffirmed. Juno pointed her chin toward the dark ship on the days visible through the glass. A shadow among stars. If I win, I fly her. And if you fail? The Kest asked again, inviting the echo. You keep your ship, she said evenly. And I become a story you tell with your hands when you're tired of being brave. The automaton's lenses IRized. Agreement stands. Measure will be presence and poise across 3 cycles. Participants may decline. Spectators may witness. The Lorik pulsed a faint chimming assent. The Festin clattered a reluctant yes. From the Crix, a thin, tired chord that meant we will watch, we will not adore. Juno rolled her shoulders once, felt the jacket pull across the scar, counted her breath. In 4, hold 2, out 6. The Solace Fire had taken a third of a deck and a woman whose name she never learned. It had given her a metronome. Gifts were rude things. You used them anyway. She glanced up at the automaton. Record this right. I always do, it said. And the faintest static in its voice sounded like a smile. The Kest Prime stepped to the line etched in the floor witness boundary and folded his arms. He didn't loom. He didn't need to. The room had enough gravity without tricks. Begin when ready, said the arbiter. Juno exhaled until her shoulders lowered, and the room came into focus as shapes she could arrange. Pedestal, case, glass, planet, predator, chorus, mirror. The hall beyond glittered with held breath. The invincible waited in the corner of her eye like a good lie daring to become true. Ready, she said, and reached for the past. They moved to a glass teardrop chamber Kelly levered off the hall. Beyond it, a slow copper planet and a river of stars. The automaton hovered, recording. Juno set a velvet case on a pedestal. Inside, an archaic metal shape compact, heavy as history. Even in vacuum-rated silence, the object made the room feel louder. A soft ripple of shock passed through the 9. We know this fable, the Crix chorused. Where I'm from, Juno said. It's called Russian roulette. The automaton's lenses contracted. The Kest Prime's secondary lids slid down a fraction. The Lorik flattened, trying to reflect the danger away. Explain, the Kest said. No, Juno answered. Calm as a metronome. Explanation is a kind of armor. You asked for courage. That's hands and breath, not rules. She didn't discuss chambers, rounds, or odds. She didn't show the mechanism. She only held the device with reverence and put it back, turning the moment into ritual. Not instruction. What do you stake? The arbiter asked. Juno tipped her chin toward the shadow-sleek ship. If I win, I fly the invincible. And if you fail? The Kest asked. Then you keep your ship, Juno said. In a story, silence sifted. Somewhere deep in the station, a child laughed, ordinary as gravity. The Kest nodded once. 3 cycles, presence, poise, no theater, just nerve, Juno said. That's the point. Under her jacket, a small scar near her ribs throbbed once, the coin-sized reminder from the orbital Solace Fire, where she'd learned that courage didn't care for speeches, only for the next steady motion. Round 1 began the way bad ideas do, with everyone pretending they were calm. Juno settled onto the low stool, the pedestal at heart height, the glass chamber hanging off Kairos like a raindrop that had changed its mind. The copper planet turned beneath, slow as a thought. She rolled her shoulders until they dropped, felt the tug across the coin-sized scar under her ribs, and let the Solace rhythm find her in 4. Hold 2, out 6. The breath didn't make her brave. It made her steady. She opened the velvet case and took the relic in both hands. Metal, cold, dense, balanced like a sentence with only one verb. The weight did its trick, the universal trick telling the lizard brain a story about endings. Juno acknowledged the story, set it on a shelf, and refused to decorate it. No speeches. She lifted the muzzle to her temple, skin dimpling where cold met warm. The entire chamber seemed to telescope down to a small circle of steel, and the thrum of her pulse inside it. She could feel the crowd trying not to breathe for her, and, perversely, that helped. Breath was her job. She pressed. Click. Not thunder dry, utilitarian. A paw stepping a ratchet. But it stole a beat from every chest in the room. Juno lowered the relic and set it on the felt as though it were a teacup. Her hands stayed open on the wood until the tremor left it. Presence, she said, to no one in particular and everyone at once. Your turn. A festooned brood sib came forward, plates whispering. Without the chorus of their swarm, their motions had the fragile bravery of a lone violin. Their second heart double-tapped beneath the armor, a rhythm that made Juno's chest ache in sympathy. They took the device with the careful curiosity of someone handling a live fossil. Touched cold to chitin, flinched, breathed, touched again, and eyes squeezed tight. Click. A little tempest of air rushed out of a dozen lungs. The brood sib stepped back, mandibles clacking a gratitude prayer that needed no translation. The crook squire drifted forward to the line, velvet wet with the condensation of their fear. Our lungs sing what we feel. They harmonized, voices making the glass taste faintly like rain. We will not perform this key. They bowed, and the bow was dignified, not cowardly. The Lorik flowed next. Mercury made piped and etiquette. We have no temples, they rang, bells inside fog. Only surfaces. We will try as we are. Metal pressed to liquid metal. Juno heard, or felt, 1,000 tiny vibrations like rain on foil skitter through the Lorik's body. Then smooth. Their inner halo flickered and stilled. Click. The sound did something strange, reflected in a body that was itself a reflection. It seemed to double and then resolve, as if the room were learning how to listen. The Kest Prime did not move. He watched. Predators study first. If he was a storm, this was the pause where the air takes inventory. Round 2. Juno re-centered the relic in her palms and felt, absurdly, the memory of a cheap ceramic mug orbital solace mess hall. Heat bleeding into her fingers while alarms lied about being drills. She had gone back for a stranger's hand and smoke so thick it made geometry soft. That was the day she learned courage didn't care if anyone saw. It only cared if the next motion was true. She found the same spot on her temple, consistency as devotion. The muzzle kissed that small hollow again. Her pulse behaved. Through the glass, a freighter winked its beacons like a nervous eye. She waited until the need to hurry subsided. Click. Softer now? No, she was simply better at hearing herself. She put the relic down. No flourish, no smirk. Theater was the enemy. The festoon took a step, then another, then shook their head. Carapace chattering in a staccato language of apology. We are brave inside. Chorus, they said. Alone is a different climate. Their plates settled with the relief that follows an honest admission. The Lorik rippled. Halo dimming. We reflected you once, they chimed. To demand it again would be to scuff the mirror with vanity. They retreated, becoming less person and more column of considerate fluid. All eyes went to the Kest. He stepped forward. Up close. The Prime smelled like cold stone after lightning. He took the device the way you take a baby bird or a loaded legend, palms open, fingers slow. He weighed it, not for mass, but for meaning. He looked at Juno. Why invent this? He asked, not stalling, honoring the question. Because sometimes fear lies, Juno said, quiet as close weather, and sometimes it points true. We needed a way to listen that didn't flatter us. We aren't as smart as we pretend. A private nod. He set the metal to the side of his head. The muscles in his jaw made small decisions. A pulse beat once in the granite of his throat. Click. Stone loosened by one grain. The room remembered how to be a room. A murmur, thin as silk, slid around the witness ring. Admiration from some throats, anger from others. Relief from most. Round 3 arrived like the third beat in a dangerous joke. Late. Inevitable, maybe a knife. Juno did not speak. Words were a kind of shelter, and the point here was weathering. She smoothed the felt without noticing she was doing it, then stilled her hand. The solace metronome ticked in her bones. In 4, hold 2, out 6, she lifted. Outside the glass, a long-tailed comet wrote its temporary handwriting across the dark, bright and patient. The automaton's inner lenses clicked, filing on next to procedure. Juno pressed click or softer. Or everyone else had learned to breathe quiet. She placed the relic back on the velvet and turned it 1 inch away. 1 inch back, an unconscious calibration that said, I choose you. You don't own me. No one moved. The Festin's secondary eyes went soft. Plates unlatched, the barest fraction, the body language of concession. The Loric collapsed into a low pool that hugged its own shadow, halo down to a thoughtful glow. The Kriegschweier hummed a minor chord that meant enough in 7 dialects. The Kest Prime stepped back without theater. His voice writhed like a mountain correcting its own weather. We concede. The automaton rotated midair, lenses flaring, seal stamps unfurling in some invisible ledger. Concession recorded. By assembly accord, victory is awarded to hold, chimed the Loric, gentle as a bell behind a wall. Every head tilted. The Prime's gaze sharpened. The automaton paused with bureaucratic grace. The Loric inclined toward the pedestal, their surface trembling with a question learned from mammals. Clarify for the record, they said. Did it ever fire? A dozen species leaned forward for the answer. 100 motives sharpened. Juno could feel the press drones zoom, hungry for absolutes. For the first time since the glass door had sealed, Juno's smile reached her eyes. That's not what we were measuring. The automaton's lenses narrowed the machine's version of approval. Measure complete, it intoned, and the words rang like a gavel in a room that preferred knives. Juno closed the velvet case with a soft mechanical finality. The sound felt larger than it was. As she did, her reflection caught in the glass, a woman whose hands had learned the weight of old tools and older stories. She met her own eyes long enough to remember Solace's smoke, and the stranger's hand and the choice that had felt like falling and had actually been staying. When she looked away, the hall beyond was a bloom of faces and flags and hungers. Somewhere in that noise, the invincible gleamed like a promise daring to become work. Juno stepped back from the pedestal, palms empty, and the chamber let out a breath it hadn't admitted it was holding. The game, of course, had never been a game. It was a mirror set on a table and an invitation to sit where you could see yourself. The Prism Hall ceremony moved like a well-oiled hinge. Pages turned, seals pressed. Translations hummed like tame ghosts. The arbiter's lens stacks dilated and contracted, committing the moment to whatever archive machines believe in. Delegates leaned forward with the appetite of people who know history is just minutes ranged with conviction. On the days, the Invincible pivoted to face her new registry holder. Even still, she looked fast. Juno stood 3 steps from the gangway and made herself small for 3 breaths, just a dock rat. From Solace, stood under her nails, listening for the hum that meant we survived the night. The Solace scar pulsed once, a tuning fork and bone. She let it settle. Then she straightened into Captain. The Kest Prime approached at a slant that respected both geometry and dignity. Up close, he smelled like cold stone and thunder. You brought peril into our hall, he said. It wasn't accusation. It was a sentence made of granite. I brought a mirror, Juno answered. If peril looked back, it had your face, not mine. A pause fractional, expensive. Then the smallest dip of the predator's massive head. We will honor the wager, he said. The translator flattened his tone, but Juno heard the flint under it. We are not done with this lesson. The Loric flowed near, halo brushing dust like blessing. Your ritual is cruel, they chimed. Light trembled in their surface as if it were scared of itself. Ours was cruel before it was ritual. Juno said, softer. Today, it was theater on purpose. That's the mercy. The Festin brood sib clicked, curiosity overcoming shame. Then the device? Gutted, Juno said. Museum shelled. No teeth. She rapped the casing of the relic with a knuckle. It answered with a hollow museum note. The risk wasn't the mechanism. It was sitting with fear as if it were a guest instead of a king. The arbiter rotated, voice smoothing into proclamation. Transfer complete. Registry recognizes Captain Juno Vega. Captain fit like a jacket that had been waiting for her shoulders. The hall's murmurs sharpened admiration, resentment, the metallic smell of recalculation. Fallout arrived with the efficiency of gravity. A Festin delegate told the press drones, "This human's courage is a trick." The quote would bend into headlines by sundown. Aloric Envoy filed a caution brief with the Accord's ethics board. Anthro-ritualized coercion in mixed-species venues. Preliminary concerns. 3 minor polities messaged. Juno directly to flattering. 1 threatening. The flattery wanted routes through disputed lanes. The threat wanted a rumor erased. And then a thin, cold ping reached the Invincible's comm queue. Unsigned, routed through 6 suns. You humiliated a Kest. Predators remember. Juno read it twice and filed it under true statements that aren't warnings so much as weather. Courage without consequences is just posture. She walked the gangway because you honor moments with feet, not flourishes. Inside, the ship smelled like cold metal, ozone, long patience. The cockpit wasn't a throne. It was a clean desk. She set her palm on the console, and the hum rose, a low animal lifting its head. "Hello, beautiful," she said. "Let's find horizons that think they can outrun us." The Crick's choir gathered in the hatch, voices braided like rope. "Will you rename her?" they asked. "Names change, sometimes when the air does. Invincible is a lie," Juno said, smiling like a dare that has already paid rent. "But lies can be useful if they make you prove things. She can earn it, Captain." Chief Pilot Re, one of Kairos's human freelancers, who'd offered their services the exact second. It would sting. Old rivals leaned in the doorway, chewing practiced gum. "Doc says you've got a 10-minute departure window before the Assembly's Decorum Committee invents a form we don't want it to fill. Then we'll be polite by leaving," Juno said. "Re, warm the grid. Suri, check life support with your hands, not just the screen." Suri called from the engineering well, knuckles already tapping each panel like she was tutoring it. On the Invincible, the Kest Prime stood at the bottom of the gangway, looking up. The way mountains look at storms, interested, unsermonized. "Where will you go, Captain?" he asked, public for the record but private in its angle. "Wherever someone thinks courage has to be loud," Juno said, plotting a vector that dodged safety and aimed for significance. "I like showing them it's quiet." He made a sound that might, one day, become laughter. The gangway retracted. Seals hissed like snakes deciding to be roads. Outside, the Prism Hall's glass facets turned the Invincible into a moving galaxy. Juno eased her free. The ship responded like a shoulder that has found work again. Kairos control. Reset into the friendly void. Invincible requests departure on Vector Theta 12. Vector Theta 12 cleared. Came the bored voice of someone who had just met a legend and was refusing to be dramatic about it. "Good hunting, good accounting," Juno returned. She believed in wishing the right things at the right people. They slipped through the station's traffic cone. The copper planet rolled beneath like a slow coin. The river of stars uncoiled. For 3 long breaths, the bridge was only hum and starlight, and the sense that the ship had been holding something back for years and had now stopped. "Contact," Suri said, to calm. 1 sloop, vectoring astern. Transponder dark, signature Kest make, old teeth. New paint. Let's not give the Decorum Committee something to write about. Re-muttered. The sloop took up position at a distance that managed to be both polite and predatory. Juno felt the solace scar hum warning or memory. She never decided which. In 4, hold 2. Out 6, courage had a rhythm. You could dance even if you didn't like the song. "Put her on," Juno said. The main screen cracked into a predator's face, not the Prime, but close enough to trouble. Bone-latticed arms, the stillness of an animal that never wastes emotion. "Human," he said. "Predators remember. Some do," Juno said. "Some evolve." A ridge twitched near his jaw. "Return the ship." "No." Silence opened like a hall. The Kest stepped into it without touching the floor. "You insulted our hall," he said. "I made you a promise in it," Juno said. "You conceded. Your Prime made a second promise. I respect the chain of teeth." A long blink, the Predator's version of thinking. "What did you measure in there?" he asked, not hiding the hunger. "The same thing you measure when you watch a storm and decide to plant anyway," Juno said. "The quiet decision to be present." The Kest hunter leaned in. "And the device?" "Harmless," Juno said. "All teeth were ours." He studied her for 3 exact heartbeats. "Predators dislike being made to watch themselves," he said finally. "We prefer reflections that flatter the bite, Then you understand the discomfort, Juno said. You can bite us later. Right now, I have a window. A sound came through the channel like stone deciding whether to crack. We will not strike in front of witnesses, he said, turning away a fraction so she could see the learning. But the rim is large. Good, Juno said. So is my patience. The screen cut. The sloop stayed a minute longer, a coda made of proximity, then peeled off, dignity intact. Hunger deferred, re-let out a breath he'd apparently been saving since birth. You just told a guest to make an appointment. Good boundaries are love, Juno said. Spool FTL, minimal flair. Let's leave them with silence. Suri's fingers danced. Spooling. Margin at 8%. Give me 10, Juno said automatically, and heard Reyes. Years and systems away. In the cadence of her own voice, we don't win with mass. We win with margin. She smiled into the hum and watched Suri coax to extra percent out of dedicated systems. That suddenly wanted to help with 10, Suri said, pleased in a quiet way. Punch, Juno said. The stars stretched. The ship's bones sang a note that machines used to remember their names. The world narrowed to a tunnel, and then widened to a map dot in the soft after. The bridge lighting warmed. Ree took off his gum and stuck it to a blank spot on the console. With the ceremonial care of pilots everywhere. We've got a queue of messages, Captain, he said. Some congratulatory, some not. Broadcast one thing first, Juno said, and nodded toward the recorder. Retouched the key. This is Captain Juno Vega of the Invincible, she said. Voice traveling in a straight line through 13 kinds of skepticism. We'll be working routes that wobble when fear leans on them. We take contracts that make sense and truths that hurt. If you want theater, buy tickets. If you want courage, bring breath. She cut the channel and sagged into the chair for the length of a blink. The scar settled. The ship's hum got comfortable under her palm. Course? Re-asked. Juno flicked her eyes to the nav. 3 blips pulsed. A famine convoy needing escort through a disputed pinch. A Crix monastery whose signal had gone ragged. A minor polity that wanted a lesson to go with their lanes. The monastery first, she said. People who keep other people's air running get to go first. Copy, Ree said, hiding a grin under routine. On Kairos, the Lorix ethics brief would be filed, and then argued, and argued again, until someone wrote a better question. The Festin would fight in their own tongues about bravery inside chorus and alone. The Kest would edit the lesson until it fit their mouths. The automaton would shelve the day under categories that sounded dry and were anything but. Courage exhibits, unarmed. Precedent ritual proof without harm. Fallout-active. In the glass chamber, the velvet case sat open and empty. It had been the shape of a fear that once ate gods for a living. Now it was just absence with tidy corners. Juno thought of it and saluted not the relic, but the room where 9 kinds of people had watched themselves not blink. On the Invincible. The console chimed in, incoming from a restricted band. Juno thumbed it open. The screen showed the Kest Prime's profile in half shadow. Secondary lids lowered. Respect now, not predation. Captain Vega, he said. A correction. Go on, Juno said. You did not humiliate us, the Prime said. You made us practice. Predators dislike practice. A beat. We would like more. Juno felt, absurdly, like laughing. Pick a place with good coffee, she said. Bring teeth. Leave theater. The Prime inclined his head. We will send coordinates. And payment. The screen went dark. Payment, Ree said. Reverent and scandalized. Take the compliment, Suri said. Equally both. Juno set the engine curve for a long, quiet burn and watched the margin settle at 10-8 earned, to insisted. She drummed her fingers once on the console. The rhythm Solace had taught her. In 4, hold 2, out 6. Ships earn their names. People do, too. Let's work, she said. And the Invincible leaned into the dark like it had been waiting all its life. For the right kind of quiet.